Tree-lined boulevards, Ildella City from the Pont des Arts, upstream the Temple of Jupiter, of Sugar and Sully building to the heavens, another American tourist. Somewhere on the top floor, somewhere in the silence, sometimes penetrated by the city noise, windows open, spring air, a pile of thick books, a half-empty wine bottle, 2 legs in the air. Oh, orgasm. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Richard Sunderland's paper round. He's there. We hope you've got a nice evening tonight. We have in the house, obviously, poet laureate Michael Sullivan, the disgustingly talented Julian Isaacs, the brilliantly talented Laura Quigley, and obviously Mike the Greek. How you doing? All right? I've got news for you. I've got news for you. Oh, in Cannes is the cameraman.
The living embodiment.
The living embodiment. The cameraman. My name is Nick Ingram. I'm your MC for the evening, and I'm a lazy fat bastard. I always have been and always will be. This next piece is about me being a lazy fat bastard when basically back in July I was just sat in an armchair watching the Tour de France and watching too much film. In July, I only ever seemed to dream of bicycles, long roads, peloton snaking for miles across landscapes, slipping and slithering through towns and villages, over hills and mountains and down the descents of the Pyrenees and the Alps, across the cobblestones of the Champs-Élysées, jump cut through 35mm of bright monochrome filmed by a young Jean-Luc Godard. Light beam flicker, the whirl of a projector, New York Herald Tribune. Even if Isabel thought that modern cinema began on the cobblestones of this long Parisian street, she forgets to quote the actuality of Italian neorealism and cameras panning across the hills of Rome. In the end, all roads lead to Rome, unless, like some others, your destination will be, in the end, Santiago de Compostela. In reality, there never was a beach beneath those paves, although under the jagged stones of Paris-Roubaix, the skeletons of many riders lie marooned. Thank you. I think it's going to be one of your last performances, isn't it, tonight?
One of them.
Maybe half of them. He's getting close to coming to the end of his tenure. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Sullivan, Plymouth Poet Laureate.
And now, for something completely different. Richard came to me last year and said, I'm writing a book. More than that, I'm painting a book. I don't want a foreword. I want something that gives the reader a clue as to where I'm going with this. It means a poem. And I only know one poet. You. Wonder if you'd be so kind. This was the result. After the book, paper round. Blind. Eyes like fumbling adolescent fingers, feeling all, seeing nothing, only numbers. Numbers on each rubbed and thumbed corners of tomorrow's fish and chip shop smugglings. Number 12. The Guardian, nearly done now. 17 turns of the pedals on tear-wet grey, bought from the War Office, 17th century slates, muttering their 1,000-score hard-trodden tales. Number 17, Daily Mail, rally grifter, signal box red, mind you, tossed against 19th century railings, black and gold and iron soldiers at attention to honour them coming home. Broken and hollow-eyed from the Crimea. Number 19, Express and Dandy, dodged the buses on tree-lined Tavistock Road. Thorne Park. Number 20 Flaxley, towering, Victorian, shouting its colonial past and dreams of lost empires across the park. At its upstart, post-war, poor relations. Western Morning News, no comment. Slip and slide on the red and gold and amber of the autumn ice rink leafy carpets. Slip and skate under century-old beaches, standing watch on buckled pavements like old men. Wizened, gnarled, cankered, and all-seeing, all-knowing. Keeping the secrets and the bloodshed and the tears of a dozen wars. Number 37. Daily Express and Eagle. Castellas, iron and lead. Outside number 42, just a dandy. The lampposts of 1,000 score of dewy nights and unimportant days. Frowning down upon a dozen generations of carelessly abandoned bicycles and cock-legged dogs. Quick woodbine under the shady secret links. Time for church. Richard's paper round, as it was. Rally drifter, signal box red, mind you. He then came to me and said, I have a space. And I'm sort of going the urban route, and there might be more, he said. I rather like this. I like the quiet lunch hours in the Hyde Park over a huddled Guinness. I like the whole experience. I don't think I can stop at one book. He said, there will be more. I need more enticements. I had written some time before a piece about cities, which I live in by necessity. I have a sickly wife who can't be too far from the hospital, the pharmacy, the doctor, before which we spent our entire adult life out in sticks. So I have a view on the city, and I recorded it in a piece called Leviathan, which I propose to share with you, whether you like it or not. Leviathan. In twilight vapors, the municipal colossus lays breathing. Its concrete and wood and steel and glass bodies sprawled, abandoned, broken and untidy, brick and tile limbs akimbo where it fell, spent, futile, exhausted by its day's labours. Black asphalt arteries alight with 1,000,000 flashing corpuscles, flaming bacteria of red and white and green and amber, scurrying parasites, intent, insect and myriad, picking and toying, weaving their frantic dances in the black folds of its cooling flesh. Night creeps in amongst its stone-flagged deeps and crevices, oozing, penetrating, pernicious, leaching into every open wound and fissure like living crude, wraiths of mist and steam, like milk in water, swim and eddy as it breathes, deep and sonorous. In the creases of its nightshirts, another life ends, and another. Lives, bright pinpoint glowworms, they wink on and off. It begins to dream. Wild, psychedelic deliriums, technicolor neon imaginings that swirl and cavort surreally, filling its flashing arteries with fire. Rapid eye movements, deeply, darkly fevered and hypnotic. It dreams its gargantuan dreams, its titanic nightmares. Flashes of past lives, shadows against its glass and concrete lids. Echoes of lives yet to come. faint in its darkly hollow alleys and cuts as the city sleeps on. Derelict and reckless in its disregard, blind and deaf, oblivious to the mechanical mites that shear its bed, the steel spiders that scurry and tiptoe across its face, weaving their wet silver webs across its tarmac arteries. Hissing, the electric cockroaches whining and sibilant, clattering their white swollen eggs to a million red brick nests. Snaking centipedes shriek and rush under the giant skin unseen, bot-like and parasitic, they bore and wriggle, coursing their labyrinthine tunnels, turning their tired tarantellas forever in the dankness, singing and roaring from one white-tiled abscess to the next, astride their rattling, shivering quicksilver trails, as in the blackness, behemoth empties its bowels, loosens its bladder, and purges itself of the putrid, pungent waste of its defecating millions. Sluicing and surging, loosing the vomit, the fast food liver, and the dog crap, emptying its belly for the new day's banquet. A siren, whistling, nasal, rises and falls and rises and is gone, smothered by the goose-down pillow of thick, physical night. Night beetles, their eyes alight, tick and skitter, foraging in the city's bedclothes for the detritus of the day. Death watch and done, laborious and frenetic, to and fro and to, all waging their eternal nocturnal war against the coming of the day, against the coming of the silence, tangible, deafening, utter, and terrible, of the awful darkness in those last few hesitant moments before the dawn, before the first light of unforgiving day slices open the city's eyelids, and Leviathan awakes.
I suppose you get me now. Again. Of course not. Some stuff from the book. I've been writing a lot the last 2 or 3 years about sort of like drinking on the Barbican in Southside Street. So this is a slightly darker take on that subject. So in these bars running along this narrow, long, winding Southside Street by this ink-stained, watered Sutton Harbour, what exactly are these drinkers waiting for? Is it just to escape? Or are they looking for their own mortal redemption? Are they waiting for a saviour to rise from the dirty tarmac of Southside Street? Someone who will grant them blessing and benediction, someone who will give them release from their own sins and bottomless pints. As toothless they pass the day in the nothing while playing sad songs on digital jukeboxes, choosing only songs of their youth, as if the golden age had already passed. And now they wander door to door, bar to bar, brew to brew, landlord to landlord, lost in the labyrinth grip of need. And yet, as you watch them slowly consuming themselves, you wonder, are they still, are they really standing still, waiting for the end? Jester and joker combined, foolish and lost, foolish and found in nothing. Was it once somebody said that the fool represented the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Only they may not understand the truth they represent or the truth they repent, the truth which they try to escape every time they ask for a pint and their loyalty card is stamped. For once more they wait for a saviour who will never come. Only time will tell in the end. Only time will finish this. Time in the end will be the saint of them all. Tick, tock, tick, tock, tick, tock, tick.
Basically, that last bit.
This is another take on drinking on the slightly meant to be pseudo-anthropological. It should be noted that in my time of drinking lightly on Plymouth Barbican, that there are several social types who normally partake of libation in this social millennium. These fine examples of human beings would never be included within the same classification as the silent passive-aggressive types, which have yet to be studied. As for the passive-aggressive types, this classification will be committed to paper in the next year. Speaking in broad terms, the more progressive genus can be classified into the following social categories. They are fine examples of beer mojo hunters, wise men, wise women, wiseacres, bar philosophers, savants, saints, geniuses and wise fools. All have the habit of travelling like pilgrims down to Truro to pay homage at the shrine and tabernacle of Skinner's Brewery. All have a fine appreciation of the finer things in life, combined with a fundamental knowledge of local real ale. A knowledge which should be committed to academic monograph. For in the end, the theology of the high priests of ale should be preserved for the wisdom and the moral guidance of future generations to learn from. This next piece is also in the book. This is slightly a bit more dark. He sits there unscented, fat with a grey beard, while wearing a far too small t-shirt, a baseball cap covering his balding head. In front of him sits his tablet turned off far too loud, streaming crap late afternoon game shows. He purses his lips and slurps his beer, most likely wondering why he had become deaf to the reality which surrounds him as he stares into the nothingness of television. Maybe he has an issue where he thinks reality is nothing more than a game show to him, an act, a medium, a point where others are nothing more than objects to be voted of for his own entertainment. Sometimes he watches the horse racing with the volume turned up so loud that it disturbs everyone in the bar, and then disappearing out of the door to place his bet at the bookmakers on Southside Street. Yes, life may well be a television game show. The rest of this is just sort of like prose vignettes of drinking on the Barbican. A friend of mine read through these a few years ago and he said, you spend far too much time sat at bars drinking. And I'd probably agree with him, so you know. This is Bar Girl who works at the Maritime Inn down on Southside Street. She has long blue hair. The colour of her hair came from a botched attempt to dye it a different colour. Other than an overload of tattoos which seem to cover every inch of her body, she is actually quite short, and I mean short. She normally wears her hair up, but when she has her long hair down, she looks like Cousin It from the Addams Family. In fact, she looks like a deep blue Cousin It. This can be very disturbing and troubling for the regular clientele who tend to drink here. I noticed something a little out of the ordinary the other day while walking along Southside Street. On the opposite side of the road, a gentleman was walking very slowly, wearing a chemical warfare suit and carrying a cattle prod. A little further down the road, I looked back at him and noticed he was going into the Queen's Arms. A growling sound emerged from the doorway. Ginger must be on her shift. His garb in this context makes a lot of sense. She stares into the chrome of the coffee machine as if it were a mirror completing her French plait. Her tight leather trousers highlight her figure. You could say she was giving what could be described as gluteus maximus, or a rather fine example of gluteus maximal. Yeah, I'm a pervert, so I can Sat on the hoe in the summer sun, waiting for the blonde to turn up, with a fresh smell of mown grass entering my nostrils, while perusing a volume of poems by the American poet E. Cummings. It may have been the heat of the sun, but I smile as the thought hits me that the name E. Cummings sounds very much like a Yorkshire man reaching sexual climax. Coming! Standing at a bar in the Barbican, wondering if I spend too much time standing in bars talking to some guy who I think I will drink down the Dolphin. He was rambling on about something or another, only then he mentioned he'd been burgled recently. The police had been called, yet he also added that his flat had not been wrecked. No, he said, they broke in and replaced the entire contents of the flat with replicas. Personally, I thought he was lucky the police did not have him sectioned there and then. And maybe this little tale also confirms that I've been standing at Barbican bars for far too long. Sat on a high stool in the Maritime Inn, drinking some beer during the afternoon on a Friday, wondering about what kind of decadence I can get up to over the weekend. Quite obviously that long will not be involved. Just to keep my attention on something other than just the beer, I'm flipping through a volume of prose by Woody Allen, when the thought hits me, is Soren Kierkegaard Woody Allen without the jokes? Or is Woody Allen Soren Kierkegaard with jokes? It would seem this afternoon I had run into my own contradictory fallacy. Oh well, it's Friday afternoon after all. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we have Michael Greek.
You've heard it all before, but do you know what? I just felt like going with this because, I don't know, feeling's not always right, but basically the last days of summer, so it's basically a little ditty about the last days of summer, metaphorically or otherwise, you take it as you will. Okay. Billowing yellow and emotional, the hot day's fields wave in the emotional summer dusk, drinking this moving sea like a hot day's thirst for something, like a memory of love. Intense firebrand inside paints a syllable of the last summer day, warming inside and out where nothing could harm me now till the end of the day. The cuckoo, the wood pigeon's gallant chorus, swallow twitters, blackbird tweets. Now my tired soul craves this moment as I lay back in the long grass and feel the heat. Stone of line, silent footpath without time, sleeping highway for badger and fox, deep seeping seas of baked red clay jutting icebergs of ghost white rock. The monotone jet scrapes the cold blue ether, chalks 1,000 miles of bone white china. It too has its place in this dance of day. It rolls from existence with a yawn, and the curtain of sound is slowly undrawn, the peace of day revealed again, except the lawnmower's done drum. I smell the cut grass on this clattering wind. Standing up, clenching rubber grips, grifting freewheel mode, gasps of breath through dry pursed lips pushed as far as I could away from home. Distant home shone of black glass far across the shimmering plain. Power rays of hungry white light reflected back, spark of shores that haze and wane, with heliotic microns that dazzle and flash adorned me during their trajectory till the moment I pass. Those days long ago before Jules' surrender of life and soul, social webs, conveyor belts, clenching walls, driven mad machines of politique, land and people that capitulated to vicious war, vigorous turmoil, to the world taken over by the world, the anxiety of a world of false idols, ferocious obsolescence, the altar of pragmatic purse, stargaze fallacies, hard twisted by mercy. Lack of light left them clambering and wilting, and atrocious lies like stolen roses rambling, for medicine foul with murderous desires, from behind in eyes to betray the rules of death for a time. Yet even from these days of ill, in the womb of a soft rolling hill, like death or life, to thankfully gaze, not bankrupt, but allowed to shine or be embraced, to fall like leaf in these last summer days, not hostage nor nostalgic of depthful shame, but in God's fine grace of the last summer days. Child of disparity in sort of like North Midlands, sort of rural, lonely backdrop of sort of North East Midlands rural childhood disparity, called East Winds. Menial worshippers in pavilion cafes, prophets who profit onto pavement, outcasts and outcasts by lampposts on pots, doorstep, die as in power in the frantic power, sword around the back. Face cheat on the shoulder of every lost customer. Sunshine strokes from your house with every lazy marker. Soft ghost chime, she likes lay back, just sad ever after. So pine chubby chime, round one lonely listeners, open for business. Why am I here? Keep still, there's a bee on your shoulder. Oh no, it's just the hand of the manager. He will keep you from getting out. Keep still, it's like blood on your shoulder. Oh no, it's just the love of vagina. Despot of nepotism, tripped us all between friends. Perfect hazy days, Madison's architects. When we're troubled, we're the gaze, they seem also too intense. Oh, how we've got itself. Lives in pragmatism, porcelain paradise. Phantasm hanging on, photographer, stories of life. So old idol, or weird cowboy dress. Saccharines and sugarcane and chambermaids of wet rain. Birthdays, which practice loving dishonor. It's early, dish roller. Keep still. Keep still, take medicine. Keep still, take Ritalin. Keep still, take saccharin. Oh, why you got to be so nice? Why you got to be so? Keep still. Why you got to be so nice? Keep still, take medicine. Lurks, wrestling at the bottom of the knoll, planted in tranquil mantles of foil, sits without plan or play, wants to be green, and is such only. Springs of pungent pine cloud the coolest coves, and add an effervescent thermal sheen hides the shyest souls. Esoteric eye, vast and vivacious, in deep set viburnum, fresh fragrance triumph from luscious deep set thrones. Green-lit candles whisper up to the arching canopy, fuming sombre khaki, vigorous green tones. A slow flickered dance of fire, branches gleam, oxygenic flame. Shadows drag to earth's dull mire, 100 weight of sheerest green. My sackcloth soul covered in undergrowth, for the terminally deprived, crawling creatures, silhouetted fathoms in this green pulsing womb, far away from outside. Cool sounds refract around the last shafts of amber, delicate embers of psalmic grace. Perhaps indeed the trees clap their hands to the Ancient of Days. Green and peaceful tree of life, breathe forth your menorahs of light onto cold crust-woven canvas mat of rusted leaves, from ceiling richly emeraldite. From the murderous world we hide, grey and mean, dug with heartless hands and best sin in mind, soulless crowds resound with screaming machine, void, no noise, lost, exhausted, hell-bent dust clouds, ambivalent dissenting phenomena like green. Green can eat the concrete layer, dropping morning anchor, dripping dew and defiant too. This time of grey. But praying shapes rustle and sway on this last passing breeze. Centuries of memories of a soul of life, diasporas with the leaves, but now resounds an existential gong, but as if they know, to still bloom in the colours of Hashem to belong, freedom in the garden, once from violent greed and mankind's bastard perfectionism, now I wish it was green. Well, there's a time for all shades into heaven, but now I wish it was green.
Would you like to say something now?
I would particularly like to stand in that spot there. It's quite a dynamic space. But I would say that pictures speak louder than words. And that is something that, for me, is how I find my own vision. Poetry, but sometimes when we get words together with the pictures, then that triggers other sort of channels of stimulus. And so for the paper round and the book, it was only half the job done. So exhibiting, printing the word, and actually bringing it to performance has sort of completed the whole creative process for me. And I'm a debutante at this, and I'm finding it really quite exciting. I don't quite know what to make of it yet, but I will sort of reflect on it. My American friend who contributed a little paper route piece in the book talks about how she felt the series of paintings were inspiring us to slow down. We're in a very fast world and we actually sort of miss things. And so when she sort of listened to what I was doing, going for the Sunday paper so I could just chill out for the rest of the day watching some football or something, she sort of said, well actually what you're doing is you're sort of taking in your space, you're sort of regaining your space, you're rediscovering your space. And the historian in me, the geographer in me, the voyeur in me about our social sort of community started to take root. And I suddenly realised that I had slowed down. I was able to sort of look at my environment in a different way. Right? Just a little bit about the pictures. The diptych on the right here is the very first two drawings I did. It's the start of the whole exploration of my environment. And I go around looking at cracks in the pavement, potholes. I love going out after it's rained, early in the morning, bright sunlight, and the sort of emptiness of the space. I think there's a car in one of the paintings. So the space to myself was something that was exciting for me. I started to realise I was slowly scratching the surface about my suburbia, my place, and current work is trying to get beyond that. If it gets into a figurative state, that would be interesting, because I've always had a little sort of stumbling block with figures, apart from my past work. But anyway, my Sunday paper inspired by how I see my place, my time now, my present moment. And tonight, thanks to Mike Sullivan, Sullivan the poet, Mike Ring, Nick Ingram, Laura later, and Julian taking us back. Hopefully we will complete this sort of performance. Right? Up until now, performance for me is just putting a picture on the wall in a gallery exhibition. And I've sort of rediscovered that there is more to exhibiting and performing tonight than I realised. Thank you all very much for coming. I hope you will. I'm looking forward to hearing Laura and Julian. Thank you, Nick.
We'd like to thank you for coming, we'd like to thank you for staying. Ladies and gentlemen, brilliant lady, Laura Quigley.
I'm going to tell you the story about a space named after a field called Mannamead, two fields in fact, called Mannamead. Millions of years ago, there was no English Channel full of water at least. The British Isles were part of the same land mass as Europe, and in the place we now call South Devon erupted a volcano, spewing out rocks, lava, creating a dry, deep, ragged crater we now call Plymouth Sound. The eruption sent shock waves through the land, creating tors and ridges that are still there north of Plymouth, and one of those ridges is Mannamead. And to the northwest, a tor emerged, where the Tor retirement home is now, and then it rained. And that tor gave birth to the Stonehouse Creek, and the rainwater became streams and estuaries, gathering into rivers, carving out river valleys we call the Plym, the Tamar, the Liner. Rivers flowed south and joined the meandering river that was there in the valley before the English Channel. On Mannamead, trees grew into forests, and then the Ice Age hit, about 12,000 years ago, smothering North Devon in ice. And every spring, human hunters walked from Europe over the valley we now call the English Channel, between the river systems, so up over the Hoe, over North Hill, across Mutley Plain, which was 10 feet lower back then, and up onto Mannamead. The humans hunted woolly mammoth, rhinoceros, saber-toothed everything, like Mannamead was in one of those Ice Age movies. And in winter, the hunters would head south again. Mannamead's first commuters. Mannamead was an ideal campsite, providing fire, water, shelter, and you can see for miles in all directions. It was both a place of transit and of safety. And when the Ice Age ended, the meltwater creating the North Sea, all that water was held back by a natural dam just off the coast of Dover. Then one day in 5000 BC, our hunters camped in Mannamead, chatting around the fire, when that North Sea dam bursts and a wall of water floods the valley, creating the English Channel. Now let's fast forward thousands of years, and the Celtic tribes in Devon are outliving the Roman Empire. They're grazing their little livestock on Mannamead, trading wool, tin, copper. They could go from Mannamead anywhere they liked. They could go north to Dartmoor. They go west down Tor Lane, as it is now, to the Tamar. They go east across the Ebbing Ford, we now call Efford. And you'll find a way across the Plym to the north then, where it narrows. Of course, you can still travel across the Plym and the Tamar by boat, avoiding Mannamead, but back then the ferries were little rowing boats. Not so easy to cross in bad weather. Not so easy to cross in bad weather when you've got a horse. Not so easy with a cartload of produce or a carriage and four much later. But they did put carriages onto those little boats across the Tamar and the Plym. Contemporary accounts describe them as absolutely terrifying. So you can see the appeal of the ancient land route through Mannamead between the major river systems. In 682 AD, the Saxon warlord Kentwin invaded Dartmoor, including Mannamead, driving the ancient Britons off their grazing land across the Tamar into Cornwall, or across the English Channel to create Brittany. Now all the land belonged to King Kentwin. And if you did the king a favour, which usually meant killing somebody, usually in Britain, Kentwin would grant a parcel of land. Now the Saxons were brutal invaders and also great bureaucrats. Each allocated parcel of land was carefully recorded in a special book, therefore called bookland. There were many booklands around Mannamead, which wasn't part of Plymouth back then, you have to remember. So the Saxon warrior called Hector was granted Hector's Bookland, now called Egg Buckland. A Saxon warlord called Oswulf was awarded Compton, which comes from the Saxon word for a town in a wooded valley. Mannamead was declared folkland, which sounds like public ownership, but it was far from it. All the land of South Devon belonged to the Saxon king, and if you wanted to use it to collect firewood or graze your sheep, you had to pay for it, usually to the local Saxon landowner. But Mannamead's location meant it was a relatively safe place. And in 1086 AD, Mannamead was owned by Widor de Bockland of Compton. A fine Saxon name. But hang on, didn't the Normans invade in 1066? Did the Norman invaders leave a Saxon in charge of Mannamead? No. The Norman knight called Eudhild invaded South Devon, threw all the Saxon owners out, took all of their land for himself. So he owned Compton, Mannamead, Hexbuckland, Knackersnall, as Crown Hill was known then, Honicknall, Tamerton, Follett, Plimpton, that swathe of land all around Plymouth and Devonport, now all belonged to Eudhild the Norman. But the Saxons fought back. They made it as far as Exeter, destroying Eudhild's reputation, and the Norman king had Eudhild replaced by a Norman knight called Guy de Moussard, who was definitely French. But when Guy de Moussard introduced himself to his rebellion Saxon tenants on Mannamead, he didn't want them to know he was French. Instead of Guy de Moussard, he introduced himself as called Widor de Bockland, which is the equivalent of saying, "Hi, I'm Mr. Landowner. This is my son Alain, the landowner. This is my granddaughter Isabelle, the landowner." No, we're not French. But when Isabel got married, she inherited Compton and Mannamead as her dowry, and Compton became Compton Giffard, which you may have heard of, because her husband was Osbert Giffard, and he didn't care if the locals were upset he was French, because his nickname was Osbert Le Boeuf. He was a big chap. "I'm your new French landlord, get over it." Now, over the centuries, the owners of Mannamead became very powerful. Because of its transit location, there was growing tension between Plymouth and its powerful estates all around Plymouth and Devonport. In the 16th century, for instance, the Plymouth Corporation got rid of beggars and criminals by exiling them to Compton, which Compton didn't really like very much. So when Sir Walter Raleigh, Queen Elizabeth's favourite courtier, needed to move artillery across Devon to Plymouth, he asked the owners of Compton, "Can I move these cannon across Mannamead?" And they, of course, said, "Get on your bike." No. These were powerful people saying no to the Queen's favourite and getting away with it. And tensions grew, revealing itself in the English Civil War, when Mannamead became a battleground. Plymouth sided with Parliament. The landowners around Plymouth, they all sided with King Charles I. They were royalists. And suddenly Plymouth had to put up a line of defences against their northern neighbours. They constructed a series of forts and earthworks from Pennycumwick, across North Hill, east to Lipson, that volcanic ridge again. And the biggest fort was called Maudlin. It overlooked Mutley Plain, looking north, facing that Mannamead hill. And on September 1644, there were 10,000 royalist soldiers ready to attack North Hill. They tried firing a cannon at Plymouth defences, but they fell short on Mutley Plain. And meanwhile, the king himself had made his headquarters at Widey Court on the ridge north of Mannamead, and there he made his plans to destroy Plymouth. What he didn't know was the army that was defending that 4-mile line north of Plymouth had been greatly depleted by years of siege. Frankly, Plymouth didn't have many adult men left, so to say they had just 800 men is overestimating their forces. The defenders on North Hill, facing a royalist army of 10,000 men, had an average age of 14 years old. If you made it to 14, you were made a captain. Most of them were 12. They were terrified. But King Charles I didn't know that. But fortunately for Plymouth, he had problems of his own. His soldiers had just fought a major battle in Cornwall, travelling back in bad weather. His soldiers were very ill, and he retreated. But they left Compton and Mannamead in a terrible state. Stripped of firewood, food, animals, housing, it took a very long time for the area to recover. Now the population of Compton around Mannamead stayed very small until the 19th century, and it's the Industrial Revolution that transformed the area with railway bridges across the Plymouth, Tamar. The populations of this area started to increase. But it wasn't until after the Second World War that choices were made about living space, working space, and shopping space. Once they flattened the middle of Plymouth, the planners decided what the city would look like and what the suburbs would look like. What they didn't anticipate was the rise in car ownership, and the first thing to be sacrificed was the planned green spaces in the new Plymouth city centre, which had to be turned into car parks. But despite the traffic, much of the original Mannamead is still there, because there are things people have chosen to keep. The trees in particular, many of the green spaces, some of these are allotments, but it's always heartening to see what people choose to retain. That Mannamead Ridge was born from a volcano. It has survived ice ages, invasions, civil war, world wars. It has not been a natural space for thousands of years. Its character has been defined by choices made by human beings. So next time you're stuck in traffic around Mannamead, maybe trying to head to the Manningham roundabout or on Mutley Plain, just take a moment to realise that these are exactly the same paths that human beings have been travelling, choosing and managing for over 12,000 years.
Ladies and gentlemen, Laura Quigley. I know we have Julian Isaacs. Ladies and gentlemen, brilliant. Laura.
This is a story about when I was first in punk rock and loyalty parts were first, but relatively early. We went on tour with a band called Explosives Bells, who were famous for a record called 2 Pints of Lager and a Packet of Crisps, please, which you might have heard of, and the rehash of Rolf Harris's 2 for the Boys. Excuse me, we only lasted 3 days on the tour, and this is the third day. And at the end of the last bit, just to say you know what's happening, we'd done a gig in Sheffield and we had nowhere to stay. And we met a young punk fan who's known as Young Punk Fan, who told us we could stay at his dad's, which turned out to be 8 miles walk away, in a van, basically. So this is the third chapter of what is called 22 Pints of Lager and Fuck the Crisps. And this is chapter 3, which is called Blood on the Norfolk Broads. Not only was Young Punk Fan's dad's flat, barren and cold, so was the day that greeted us on Saturday, November the 8th, 1980. It was also grey and damp, in time of the South Yorkshire tradition, when, clutching our priceless Woolworths instruments, remarkably still no more scathed than when we left London, Arthur and I attempted to follow Young Punk Fan and Dad's directions to the bus stop for the station, accompanied by Dan, weighed down by no more than a pair of sticks poking from the pocket of his Generation X and blazing Lewis and the jacket. Mission duly accomplished, we alighted at said station. I say said, but cannot say, at this latter juncture, whether it was Rotherham or Sheffield. I can say that we determined that we needed to board our train fairly swiftly, and thus, through combined reasons of expediency and shortage of tour support funds, our meagre £200 tour support from Albion being long consumed, we were running for the Rattler. Being the Saturday before Armistice Day, my route was temporarily impeded by a poppy seller. "Here, mine out," I exclaimed as we collided in what I'd like to say was a cloud of steam from the approaching locomotive we aimed to catch. Sadly, being 1980, it was just moist Yorkshire fog hanging in the air. "What's that for?" I added. "Armistice," replied the British Legion chap. "Never mind that," replied I, quick as a flash. "Get out my way or I'll miss this train." Boom, boom. But Arthur and I thought it faintly amusing, as did some of the audience when I was inspired to share it with them later that evening. It was quite a journey, and merits note for our resourcefulness and determination after in excess of 50 hours on the road, or shall I say train in our case. National Rail informed me that where I'm travelling today, I could go directly from Sheffield to Norwich. However, I think we had to change the crew, so I'm sure I recall larking about on the platform singing Please Mr. Pauls from deference to Will Hay. This could conceivably be a combination of failing memory and wishful thinking, but I remain convinced it occurred. Regardless, after about 3 hours, we alighted at Norwich Station, where on the concourse, whilst looking for information beyond the connection to West Runton, we encountered most of that night's audience, already raring to go, fueled by cider and what one might term vitesse de vivre. Obviously, it didn't take detective skills for us to identify them, but whether they recognised us, as I like to think, or whether we introduced ourselves, I can't remember. Nonetheless, having made our acquaintance, they were going to chuff to accompany us up the Bronze Line to West Runton and to show us the way to the gig when we got there. Now, there were a few explanations for our looking forward to arriving at County, discounting the obvious one of unwinding by clagging drinks off the fans after a circa 5-hour travel journey. Foremost was the fact that my fantastic lead guitar player and producer Dick Taylor, lead guitarist in the ineffable dirty British R&B pioneers The Pretty Things and founder of Rolling Stone, was driving up from London to join us and bringing with him our large, loud and regular drummer, Pete Manicasso Haynes, like Arthur, an ex-lurker for life. This was a bad joke at the time, as both Arthur and Esso were attempting to pursue alternative post-lurker careers and were daunted at every step, or should I say review, by being dubbed ex-lurkers. Incidentally, Arthur has been a lurker again now for over 20 years, whilst Esso is playing with original Lurkers guitarist Pete Stride and bassist Nigel in the aptly named God's Lonely Man. So Lurkers for life, here's they are. The only thing that had to be resolved was what Dan's role in the proceedings would be. As much as I'd love to have had 2 drummers a la Pink Fairies, there was only one borrowed splodged drum kit to be abused. How this was resolved and the ensuing chaos it provoked will be revealed in good course. We're also looking forward to seeing Dick for lots of other reasons, principally that he was and is an amazing guitarist and dear and loyal friend to us all, but also because at the then approach the age of 37, he was like a dad to our young selves, getting us out of trouble as he often did, whilst simultaneously often managing to have a hidden hand to help us initiate it. Dick was also a great diplomat, a skill he brought into play after the show that night when the promoter didn't want to hand over the dosh. At the time, Dick's day job was as a delivery driver for Gene Machine, the renowned chain of denim emporia, and I used to drive him mad en route to gigs, mocking his unelected elder statesman's role while repeatedly singing the country tune, Rock and Roll, I Gave You All the Best Years of My Life. Anyhow, the next reason for being over the proverbial hill at seeing Dick was that he'd be in said van and would transport us home, none of us held driving license in those days, after the gig to warm beds and a hero's welcome and the accolades that would accompany our exaggerated or not tall tales of the local boozer the next day. In the interim, it was to be a long and eventful few hours before we boarded the trusty FU's mobile. Before I proceed to detail said events, let us take a brief detour. For those of you who haven't read or have yet to read Esso's great book, God's Lonely Men, ostensibly the story of the lurkers, but in reality a very readable and poignant tale of social exclusion and the demographics of Ingham Middlesex from whence the lurkers hailed, which I myself equate to a kind of English response to Camus' L'Étranger about displacement and an inability to integrate. I shall recount in brief what happened when we supported fellow Acton Punks and Satellites at a Sunday afternoon gig in the Blue Coat Boy at the Angel Islington a few months after the splodge tour. In short, the Satellites' loyal following have for some time been blessed by the infiltration of some hardcore skinhead representatives of the Evening National Front, and it transpired that the Blue Coat Boy was the stronghold of another NF contingent. Esso tells the story into the terms of everyone being desperate to do gigs, but my being so desperate I do gigs that no one else in their right mind would. Leastways, before we could play, let alone the Satellites, the most god-awful fight erupted, and we fled through the debris of broken glass and furniture to the safety of Dick's trusty van. I've taken this aside, as this tale has an amusing and ironic postscript. Namely, that when discussing Esso's book with Dick the other year, he reminded me that I'd been delighted on arriving at the venue to find halfway to Venezuela, my first single, currently riding high in a few obscure charts, on the jukebox, an almost unprecedented occurrence, and that as we cast a farewell glance over our fleeing shoulders at the riot breaking up, the last thing we'd see was the ruins of the smashed jukebox and my hit single on its edge like a punch-drunk marathon runner weaving through the shards of broken glass. That was not as irrelevant an aside as it might first appear, as we immediately observed that Westminster Pavilion, on the night in question, had a largest skinhead contingent present, who had gathered around the then sounds journalist and champion of the proto-Oi movement, Gary Bushell. Mr. Bushell was then in the process of perfecting the inflammatory inarticulacy that he went on to champion in his later capacity as a television critic for The Sun, an oxymoronic position if ever there was one. On this occasion, whilst he was displaying pride and joy at hanging out with and writing about ourselves and splodge, we were immediately wary, as he seemed all too keen on inciting, if not actually orchestrating, some kind of flare-up to enliven the proceedings and expand his material. Anyway, back to the dressing room, where Esso was offering to stand down from the drum stool for the night, as Dan had been playing the tour to date, whether through reasons of deference, personal safety, or just because it would have given him the time to drink more lager, I'm not sure. I'd hazard a guess, an educated guess at the latter. As Pete's dear departed by the day, also not a substantial drinker, and jumped in the van with him, they probably fancied a night on the lash together. Following a brief exchange and examination of the possible scenarios, chaired by Dick and I, it was determined that Dan would join Dick on lead guitar. In Dan's case, one of our spare Woolworths issues guitars, but wouldn't plug in, as the notes were in fact issued from Dick's guitar. We duly took the stage, fueled as usual with ample beer, apart from Dick, who remained sober and employed his habitual self-preservation strategy of playing his heart out while standing in the wings, out of the way of any threatening missiles and/or speed. Dan took to his new role like a freshly shot duck to water, and, as they say, the crowd went wild. The type of wild they went was to throw and gob as much as they could, while simultaneously giving us the most appreciative reception of the tour. In the course of all this revelry, flying beer cans struck Dan right on the temple, carrying a large gash, which soon had cloud streaming from it. Dear Dick duly abandoned the stage after that number and whisked Dan off to the nearest casualty unit, whilst our Esso and I soldiered on for a couple of tunes to what I must say was remarkable acclaim, before we abandoned ship and left the stage to the art school dance calling copia that was splodging us abounds. Instead of quieting down, as we would have expected to be splodged on, or at least lessening the level of stick they were inflicting, the audience upped the ante, going on to boost splodge off, when they demonstrated they were less well equipped than us to withstand it. Whilst we were all cowering in the dressing rooms and the ridiculous Mr. Bushell was out in front rubbing his hands in idiotic glee at the level of both potential and actual violence, lo and behold, what did we hear? The crowd started to chant, "We want pass!" We recovered from this unheard of adulation and went back on stage. No sooner had the three of us launched into a number, and Dick arrived back from the local hospital with Dan, who was proudly displaying a good few fresh stitches in his bodies. They both joined us, and I think not, you should have heard the roar that went up when Dan took up the unamplified Woolly's axe once more. Mr. Bushell related the incident thus in the next week's edition of Sounds. The crowd decided to respond in strictly boot boy style. I mean, heckling and missile input to levels intolerable even to Maxwell, and after a brief swapping of insults, the brand trooped off to outrageous chants of, "We want pass!" There you are, dear reader, it was in the paper, so you know it's true. It is, by the way. Postscript to this gig is that only last week I was directed to a Facebook page commemorating Westminster Pavilion. And lo and behold, the chap that threw the offending can owned up in a public forum. Well, I've liaised with Dan, and I tell you, Mr. Middle-aged East Anglian punk, you need to be afraid, very afraid. I was going to interject a tiny bit here, we didn't finish this, but a tiny bit here, which is that actually this chap not only owned up, but said that he felt terribly guilty about the can of lager, splitting my friend Dan, who's a wonderful drummer, went on to drum for Slates and Shane McGowan and various other people. I said, I've really felt bad about this, but I live in Ecuador now. I sent you a picture of where it is. I said, if you can find the airfare, you and Dan can come for a holiday in Ecuador any time you like, because I owe you one for throwing that can of beer. I told Dan, he said, believe that, you'll believe anything, you're as gullible as you were in 1980. There we go. So there we go. That, as it happened, turned out to be that as far as the tour was concerned, although we didn't know it at the time. Sunday and Monday were days off, and on the Tuesday, as luck would have it, Dick had deliveries to make in the area of that night's show, the location of which I can neither recall nor determine via the information superhighway. Suffice to say, it was somewhere not far from London, and I'm fairly sure north. It was also a bright afternoon. The sun pleasantly warmed through the windows of the van as the advance party of Dick and I meandered our way, replete from a very nice lunch in a country tea room that was a haunted jeep to the gig. We soon learned on arrival that it and the rest of the tour transpired to be off, at least as far as we were concerned, as the PA company were, in the nicest possible way, refusing to work with us due to the high levels of beer, bodily fluids, etc. going in their monitors. When with Dick by my side, exuding tranquility, I duly pointed out that splodge engendered even more unwanted liquid in their valuable kit than we did. They responded by saying, yes, but splodge paid their bills. As Joe Ramone might have said, hey ho, it was a good lunch anyway, cheers Dick. There is, dear reader, one final postscript to this little saga. Namely, that we've been trying to outdo splodge in the practical jape and joke department ever since arriving at Manchester. In our own sweet, if meagre attempt to emulate the havoc and ruts that wrought upon the dam when the former supported the latter the year before, all of which is documented elsewhere. To cut to the chase, after speaking to the PA guys, they told me I could speak to Brian Boncroft, Splodge's aptly named manager and chef de pathétique, to verify the state of play. This I did, and was duly informed, unsurprisingly, that his loyalty lay with Splodge. He put me on to Max, who was faintly and insincerely apologetic. I told him not to worry, and that when he got to their next gig, which was in South Wales, I had a joke for him to tell the audience. Now, this was the time during which the renowned Welsh boxer Johnny Owen was critically ill in a coma, and there was a dreadful sick joke doing the rounds which went, "Here, have you heard the Welsh have changed their national vegetable? It's not the leek anymore, it's Johnny Owen." Now, I truly never thought that Max would be mad enough to relay this to a Welsh audience, but I hadn't bargained on Max having been so preoccupied with his dual roles of heavy drinker and newly famous pathetic pioneer that all other current affairs had passed him by. What actually happened was, Splodge went to Wales, Max told the joke, they had to abort their set in the face of the greatest violence since Plague Connery had been burning down holiday cottages a few years earlier, those incidents themselves engendering the joke pastiche gasboard slogan, "Come home to a real fire," by a cottage in Wales. Splodge fled in their van, but were chased back to their hotel and on up the motorway in fear of their lives after their access was barred at their lodgings by irate bouncers armed with baseball bats. Max has never forgiven me for this, and indeed, still harping on about it when I saw him last summer at the Anti-Pass London comeback show.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Mike Sullivan, Richard. Thank you, cameraman. And thank you, Mike. Good evening. Oh, and thank you, Ray.